Black waitress brings leftovers to homeless man. Next day, a Rolls-Royce parks outside for her. What if a single mother working night shifts gave away food to a man no one else even looked at? What if she kept doing it, night after night, even when she was warned to stop? And what if one quiet act of kindness in the dark triggered something no one could have imagined? Janelle Harris was 34, but the lines on her face told a story older than her years. Her hands, calloused from years of balancing trays and scrubbing counters, moved with a quiet precision as she swept the floor of the Starlight Diner. The place was a relic, a 24-hour greasy spoon on the edge of Atlanta's West End, where the coffee was bitter, the jukebox played Otis Redding on repeat, and the customers were a mix of truckers, night owls, and lost souls. Janelle didn't mind the work. It paid the bills, kept her son Devin in school clothes, and gave her just enough to send $50 a month to her mama, who was fighting diabetes back in Macon. Her shift started at 7 p.m. and ended at 3 a.m., sometimes later if the closing duties dragged. Tonight was one of those nights. The last customer, a long-haul trucker with a stained Braves cap, had left an hour ago, muttering about the rain. Janelle's manager, Carl, a wiry man with a permanent scowl, had barked at her to hurry up and lock the place before peeling out in his rusty pickup. Now, it was just her, the hum of the refrigerator, and the faint patter of rain against the diner's windows. She glanced at the clock, 2:45 a.m. Her feet ached in her worn-out sneakers, and her back screamed from hours of standing. Devin, her 12-year-old, was at home with her neighbor, Mrs. Gloria, probably asleep on the couch with his math homework scattered around him. Janelle smiled at the thought, but it faded quickly. She hadn't eaten since noon, and her stomach growled as she scraped leftover meatloaf and mashed potatoes into a paper bag. It wasn't for her, though. It was for him. The old man in the alley. She didn't know his name, didn't know his story. He was just there every night, sitting on a crate near the dumpster, his gray beard matted and his coat threadbare. He never spoke, never begged. Just waited. Janelle had started bringing him food 6 months ago, after she caught him digging through the trash one night. She'd seen hunger before, in her own childhood, in the lean years after her daddy left, in the months after Devin's father walked out. She couldn't let it happen on her watch. "Janelle, you're gonna get us in trouble," Carl had snapped when he caught her slipping food out the back door one night. "We ain't a charity. You keep feeding strays, they'll keep coming back." She'd nodded, promised to stop, but she hadn't. She couldn't. It wasn't about pity. It was about doing what was right, even if no one saw. Tonight, she packed the bag with extra care: meatloaf, a scoop of collards, a slice of cornbread, and a plastic cup of sweet tea. She slipped on her jacket, locked the front door, and headed to the back alley. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the air smelled of wet asphalt and grease. She spotted him immediately, hunched on his crate, his eyes catching the dim light from the diner's back door. "Here you go," she said softly, setting the bag beside him. He nodded, just once, his hands trembling as he reached for it. No words, as always. Janelle didn't linger, she never did. She turned back toward the diner, her sneakers splashing in a puddle, and that's when she heard it, the low rumble of an engine. She froze. A car was idling at the mouth of the alley, its headlights cutting through the mist. Not a beat-up sedan or a delivery van, but something sleek, expensive, out of place. A Rolls-Royce. Her heart kicked up a notch. Nobody in this part of town drove a car like that. She glanced back at the old man, but he was already gone, the bag of food tucked under his arm as he shuffled into the shadows. The car's door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, sharply dressed in a tailored suit, his face half hidden by the brim of a fedora. He held an envelope in his gloved hand. Janelle's mouth went dry. She took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for the pepper spray in her pocket. "Janelle Harris," the man said, his voice smooth but firm. "Who's asking?" she replied, her tone sharp despite the tremor in her hands. He didn't answer. Instead, he held out the envelope. "This is for you." Janelle didn't sleep that night. After the man in the suit drove off, she stood in the alley for a full 10 minutes, the envelope clutched in her hands, her mind racing. She'd opened it under the diner's flickering backdoor light, half expecting a prank or a threat. Instead, she found a letter, a check for $250,000, and a document that made her breath catch, a fully paid food truck license, registered in her name. The letter was handwritten, the script elegant but shaky, as if the writer's hand had trembled with emotion. You fed me when no one else saw me. Your food healed my body, but your kindness healed my heart. Now it's your turn to be seen. Lionel Graves. Lionel Graves. The name meant nothing to her. She'd sat on the edge of her bed at 4 a.m., the envelope's contents spread out on her thrift store quilt, trying to make sense of it. Was this a scam? A mistake? She'd heard stories of cons targeting desperate people, but she wasn't desperate. Tired, yes. Struggling, sure. But she'd built a life for herself and Devon, brick by brick, shift by shift. She didn't need handouts, or so she told herself. By 6 a.m., she was pacing her tiny apartment, the envelope still in her hand. Devon stirred on the couch, rubbing his eyes. "Mama, you okay?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. "I'm fine, baby," she lied, forcing a smile. "Go get ready for school." She didn't tell him about the envelope. Didn't tell Mrs. Gloria when she dropped Devon off. Didn't tell anyone. Instead, she spent her day off doing what she always did when her mind wouldn't settle. She cooked. In her cramped kitchen, she chopped onions, simmered collards, and baked cornbread, the smells filling the apartment with warmth. Cooking was her anchor, her way of making order out of chaos. Her mama had taught her that, back when they'd stretch a single chicken to feed 5 for a week. But the envelope sat on the counter, untouched, like a bomb waiting to go off. She Googled Lionel Graves on her cracked phone, expecting nothing. Instead, she found articles from years ago. World-renowned restaurant critic Lionel Graves disappears after wife's death. Millionaire food writer falls off the map. The photos showed a younger man, clean-shaven, in tailored suits, smiling at Michelin-starred restaurants. Nothing like the grizzled figure in the alley. Her stomach twisted. The old man she'd been feeding, was he Lionel Graves? The thought seemed impossible, but the letter's words burned in her mind. You fed me when no one else saw me. She thought of his silence, his trembling hands, the way he'd vanish into the night. Had she been feeding a millionaire all this time? And if so, why was he living like that? That evening, she went back to the diner, the envelope tucked in her purse. Carl was in a worse mood than usual, snapping at her for being 2 minutes late. You want to keep this job, you better stop daydreaming, he growled, tossing her an apron. She bit her tongue, as always. Carl didn't know about the envelope, and she wasn't about to tell him. The night dragged. Every clink of a plate, every shout from the kitchen, felt amplified. She kept glancing out the window, half expecting the Rolls-Royce to reappear. It didn't. But when she stepped into the alley at 3 a.m. with her paper bag of leftovers, the old man wasn't there. For the first time in 6 months, the crate was empty. The next few days were a blur. Janelle worked her shifts, cared for Devon, and tried to ignore the envelope burning a hole in her life. She hadn't cashed the check, hadn't contacted the number on the food truck license. Fear kept her paralyzed, not of the money, but of what it meant. What did this Lionel Graves want from her? Nobody gave away $250,000 for a few plates of meatloaf. Nobody. On the 4th day, a customer left a newspaper on the counter. Janelle was wiping down tables when she saw the headline, "Mystery Millionaire Spotted in Atlanta Alley." Her heart stopped. The article was vague, speculative, but it mentioned a local diner and a kind-hearted waitress Waitress who fed a homeless man. No names, but the details were too close to home. She read it twice, her hands shaking. The article hinted at a fallen food critic who'd been living incognito, testing the city's humanity. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, the envelope in front of her, and finally made a decision. She called the number on the license. A man answered, his voice the same smooth tone as the one from the alley. "Ms. Harris," he said, not a question. "I was hoping you'd call." His name was indeed Lionel Graves. He asked to meet her the next morning at a coffee shop downtown. Against her better judgment, she agreed. The coffee shop was upscale, all glass and chrome, a world away from the Starlight Diner. Lionel was already there, dressed in a simple sweater and slacks, his beard gone, his hair neatly trimmed. He looked like the photos from the articles now, but his eyes were the same, haunted, searching. "I owe you an explanation," he said as she sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. He told her his story, a celebrated critic, a life of luxury, a love story cut short by cancer. After his wife's death, he'd unraveled, walking away from his fortune, his career, his life. "I wanted to see what the world was without her," he said. "I chose the streets. I chose to be invisible." Janelle listened, her throat tight. She wanted to be angry, to demand why he'd lied, but his pain was real, raw, undeniable. "You saw me," he continued. "Every night, you saw me. You didn't have to. You had nothing to gain. But you did it anyway." She shook her head. "It wasn't about you. It was about doing what's right." He smiled, a sad, broken thing. "That's why it mattered." He explained the envelope. The money was his, the license his gift. He'd been watching her, not just in the alley but in the diner, seeing her kindness to customers, her quiet strength. "You're meant for more than that place," he said. "You're meant to shine." Janelle's eyes burned. She wanted to believe him, but trust was hard. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "This isn't a debt. It's a beginning." Janelle cashed the check. It felt like jumping off a cliff, but she did it. She quit the diner the next day, ignoring Carl's protests. With the money, she bought a food truck, painted it bright red, and named it Mama J's Soul Bowl. She spent weeks perfecting her menu, soul food classics with her own twist, smothered chicken, peach-glazed ribs, cornbread waffles with honey butter. Devin helped her design the logo, a smiling bowl with a heart in the steam. The truck's grand opening was on a sunny Saturday in Piedmont Park. The line stretched around the block, drawn by a viral X-post about Atlanta's mystery waitress turned food truck queen. Janelle didn't know who'd posted it, Lionel, she suspected, but she didn't care. She was too busy serving, smiling, her apron smeared with flour, her heart full. The crowd was diverse. Families, students, old folks, even a few of her old diner regulars. Devin worked the cash register, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Mrs. Gloria stopped by, tears in her eyes. "Your mama would be so proud," she said. By the end of the day, they'd sold out. Janelle sat on the edge of the truck, exhausted but alive in a way she hadn't been in years. Lionel appeared, no fedora this time, just a quiet man in a crowd. He ordered a plate of collards and ribs, ate in silence, and left a tip, a note that said, "Keep shining." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Mama J's Soul Bowl became a sensation, featured in local news, food blogs, even a national magazine. Janelle hired 2 local kids to help, trained them herself, paid them well. She donated meals to shelters, remembering the old man in the alley. She never saw Lionel again, but she didn't need to. His gift had been a spark. She was the fire. A year later, Janelle stood in her second food truck, a sleek new model funded by her profits. Mama J's Soul Bowl had become a movement, a symbol of resilience and heart. She'd opened a scholarship fund for single mothers, named after her own mama. Devin, now 13, was talking about culinary school someday. One night, as she locked up the truck, a familiar figure appeared in the parking lot. Lionel, older now, leaning on a cane. He smiled. "I knew you'd do it." She laughed, wiping her hands on her apron. "You didn't do it. I did." He nodded, his eyes bright. "Exactly." They stood in silence, the Atlanta skyline glittering behind them. No envelopes, no cars, no grand gestures. Just 2 people who'd seen each other when it mattered most. Janelle drove home that night, the radio playing Aretha Franklin, her heart light. She'd fed one man in silence, and now she fed thousands with pride. The world had seen her, but more importantly, she'd seen herself. And that was enough.